All of this stuff is so nuts looking, I can't even understand it. Why would you put this in front of the children of the globe? Why? Bonjour, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Popola here, and I thought I'd take this Friday to talk about tolerance. Or should I say, the selective tolerance and, frankly, intolerance that's been put on global display at the Olympics in Paris, France. Let's cut to the chase, right? We all know what is getting everybody, I think, justifiably outraged, and it's the bearded lady transgender recreation of the Last Supper. This image right here, this is the thing. The Olympics committee has actually since pulled this stuff down from their website because it's, well, for obvious reasons, if you know what's going on here. So I know this actually shouldn't feel all that shocking, considering that everywhere we turn, we're sort of bludgeoned with this particular brand of inclusion. We're sitting here now in August, but I recall walking through the streets of New York City in June and seeing the progress flag hanging across the largest banks in the world. This is not really transgression in our modern age to put a drag show on for all to see. That's not that interesting, actually. What is bizarre is to juxtapose all of that with one of the most revered images in Christianity and then pretend that that's not what you're doing. Let's take a look at what they had to say after being called out for mocking all of Christendom.
Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. Clearly
not.
On the contrary, I think that Thomas Joly really tried to really intend to celebrate community tolerance. That was his word yesterday. And looking at the result of the polls that we shared, we believe that this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry.
This is an example of the kind of fake apology that makes everyone angrier, right? I'm sorry that you were offended. I'm a good person, but I'm sorry that you are a bigot. That is not really an apology at all. Now, that's just a slap straight across the face and then a backhanded slap just in case you didn't get it the first time. But let's hear what the creative visionary Thomas Joly had to say about this show. I'll read it aloud to make it easy for you, since he's speaking in French. I did not intend to be subversive or to mock or shock. Really? Really? I wanted to say that we're this big us. And last night there were ideas from the French Republic. There were inclusive ideas. Didn't include Christianity in that inclusion. 2.4 billion people on the planet. Ideas of kindness. Okay. Marie Antoinette's head being held by was not exactly the kindest image, but sure. Of generosity. Ideas of solidarity. Blah, blah, blah. Word salad nonsense. That's what we get, you know. I'm not sure what's worse. Hijacking a global event that's meant to at least have a moment of peace and unity in competitive sport for all the nations of the world to push a totally irrelevant fringe sexual identity agenda, or then pretending that's what you weren't trying to do in the first place. Pretending that mocking beloved and sacred religious imagery to kick off the Olympics in the name of not merely gay rights, but bearded ladies and transgenderism and drag queens, which are like the fringe of the fringe of the fringe. And pretending that that isn't a direct, full-throated assault on a lot of people's values, including, by the way, the gay rights movement. You know, I had a conversation with Andrew Doyle that just went live yesterday, talking all about how this transgressive movement really is an assault on gays and lesbians in America and around the world. That we are now undermining some of the most fundamental arguments that underpinned the gay rights movement. Namely, that you can't choose to be whatever you want. You are born a certain way, and that is something that you can't help. This is what's being mocked in addition to Christ's Last Supper in this tour de force, so to speak, all of us worldwide and our kids were subjected to. Just come out and say it. Have the stones to admit what you're doing instead of hiding behind a bunch of gobbledygook. Now, I can rage about this as a Christian, as a Catholic, but I want to take a step back from that for a minute because I'm not a big sports guy in general. But the Olympics has always been about more than that in a certain sense. There's two levels of offensiveness going on. They've hijacked something that is supposed to be unifying, which is the Olympics. In fact, I want to actually talk about the rings for a minute. The founder of the Olympic movement wrote this about the 5-ring logo of the Olympics. These 5 rings represent the 5 parts of the world now won over to the cause of Olympism and ready to accept its fecund rivalries. Fecund as in fertile, growth, abundant. What is more, the 6 colors thus combined reproduce those of all nations without exception. This is a moment, this is a thing, this is an institution, modeled after the ancient Greeks, brought back into our world in the late 1800s and carried through to this day, in which all nations, to some extent, set aside our wars, our rivalries, in which we aim to dominate and kill each other, to battle for merit in sports. That is what the Olympics is at its best. That is what it literally is when you're watching it. And I want to go back to some of the clips, some of the moments that have actually made this institution important in our culture. Move aside this pile of garbage that's been dumped on top of it and dig back into the recesses of history to find some of the incredible moments that have made the Olympics special. This was Black American Jesse Owens who wins 4 gold at the Olympics in 1936 in the Berlin Games with Hitler watching. So here's Mr. Original Identity Politics, Adolf Hitler, being forced to watch an African American beat the heck out of his Aryans in the games. This is what the Olympics should be about. I mean, think about this for a minute. You'll see that crowd. You've got Third Reich generals watching their guy get trounced by a Black American. It's awesome. This right here, this is what the Olympics is supposed to be about. About merit. About merit winning in the face of identity. That we are unified in our human potential, in our ability to reach for the unreachable, to grab for the ring, and sometimes to get it, to get the gold. That is what the Olympics is about. Or this incredible moment.
Still loose, 11 seconds, you've got 10 seconds, the countdown going on right now, Morrow, up to Schultz, 5 seconds left in the game, do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable!
That's the best. There was a Soviet Union, and thank God it is in the past.
They astounded the experts by beating the veteran Soviet team 4-3. In the Soviet Union, there wasn't much flag waving as the game went on. Gordon Josoloff reports.
News of the Soviet hockey defeat came on a day dedicated to victories.
Gotta remember, it's 1980. There is a Cold War raging. There's proxy battles all around the country, from South America to Afghanistan, between the 2 great superpowers in a battle to dominate the planet. And yet, there stands the Olympics, where our teams compete without drawing guns, without drawing blood. That is powerful. That is an institution worth caring about. And it's not just about nations doing battle. If you have a kid that loves sports, and it's a sport that's played in the Olympics represent a kind of heroic icon to look up to. This is one of the best things about watching the Olympics. You get to see these young people achieve the unachievable dream, to make it to the Olympics and even to win. We are in a time in which there's no institution that seems to be worthy of protecting. And that is a bad place to be. as a society. I don't want to wish everything to burn to the ground, despite the fact that there are arsons all around us trying to do it, or trying to lay the kindling for someone else to light a match. That is what is so upsetting about this hijacking of the Olympics for identity politics nonsense. It's not simply that it is an affront to Christianity, which it is. It's that it's an affront to Christianity and to any notion of a kind of human solidarity. They like to talk about solidarity, but that was the opposite of solidarity. You can make a point about universal gay rights without mocking sacred Christian images. Now, it didn't always used to be this way. There was a before times. And in the before times, the opens were playful or strange, but didn't exactly mock most of the viewers. 007.
Several examples of English humour during the course of this show.
That's from the London Games in 2012. It's been kind of making a resurgent moment because it, again, is one of these time capsules from the before times. I'm not even sure if that Churchill statue is still standing. It's probably covered in intifada garb right now as we speak. But this is the world we've left behind, and that I do think we should try to get back to, a world that frankly has a certain amount of celebration in its celebrations. I'd like for there to be more celebration in our celebrations. So, just for reference, this is the Last Supper. Here is what some are saying was internally being called the Last Supper. And the claim, the retort to this needlessly offensive image is that no, this wasn't the Last Supper. This is the Feast of Dionysus. It's just in keeping with the Greek nature of the games, you know, Olympus. This is what this is. There's a couple problems with that. Number one, even if that's true, and you say, oh, well, look, here we got this guy here. There he is. See? Dionysus. Blue. All of this stuff is so nuts looking, I can't even understand it. Why would you put this in front of the children of the globe? Why? This is bizarro land. I get that it's France. Oh, France. You know, we know you're France. We know you're going to Frenchy it up. I get it. And look, to some extent, I'm fine with that. I'm an artist. I appreciate the arts. But, you know, do you have to push it to this place? Do you have to go this far? The bearded ladies as Jesus? You know, the pushback claim is that it's actually just a recreation of this Feast of Dionysus. Problem with that is that the actual original art for the Feast of Dionysus is a pagan riff on the Last Supper. So even if you weren't clearly mocking the Last Supper, which is clearly what was actually happening, the Feast of Dionysus is so clearly a riff on the Last Supper image and art which preceded it that this is not a rebuttal at all. Look at the positions here. Look at the man leaning over to the central character. Look at this little group over on the right. The three folks turned. Look at the woman over here who's leaned away from the central character. This is not even parody. This is the same thing. It is the same underlying source. And so how are we supposed to think about this and talk to our kids about it? I don't think it's appropriate that it was pushed upon global parents and children worldwide. Here's the problem. Am I offended by this? Yes. Yes, I am. I find it offensive. I don't have a right to live my life unoffended. I don't. I believe in free speech. I actually even believe in the importance of art to be offensive. The fact of the matter is that art has always played this vital role in exploring the limits of humanity, both for good and for darkness, for beauty and light and evil and the worst of our nature. You know, you can't actually explore the imagery of hell without concocting fairly grotesque images, like the image of the Leviathan sort of ripping a man apart. This is a place we go as human beings. And art plays that role for us to explore the demons within, the darker side of our nature. I think it has a very important part of our society. So the artist and creative director claiming to be celebrating tolerance is doing no such thing. But I'm not going to get baited into reacting against the values that he doesn't understand, but I'd like to think I do, which is that creative expression, freedom of expression is a central value. And Jesus Christ taught us to turn the other cheek. Now, it has its limits, right? To turn your other cheek. And the imagery in here, in particular, the use of, frankly, borderline sexual predator visuals and imagery and iconography, I think warrants a serious conversation, because we are facing a kind of attack on the very nature of humankind. Now, this gets weirder and weirder because we're watching the games play out with gender ambiguous boxers beating the living hell out of female boxers and being told we're supposed to accept that as the new reality. That's part and parcel with the ethos and the ideology that pushed this imagery in front of us at the start of the games. One of my favorite sort of theological thinkers out there on the internet, Bishop Barron, had a message that I thought was important.
You know, a question I would pose, we all know the answer to it. Would they ever have dared mock Islam in a similar way? Would they ever have dreamed of mocking in this gross, public way a scene from the Quran?
The answer is obviously no.
As I say, we all know the answer to that. I think, folks, what's interesting here is this deeply secularist postmodern society knows who its enemy is. They're naming it, and we should believe them. They're telling us who they are. We should believe them. But furthermore, we Christians, we Catholics should not be sheepish. We should resist. We should make our voices heard.
This is my struggle. I think it's the struggle of a lot of us who want to make our voices heard. What's the right way to do that? I don't think I know the answer. I think I do a better job here than on Twitter or X. When I first saw this, I did what a lot of people do. I took to Twitter to say excessively inflammatory nonsense. Here was my not the most Christian tweet in response. You know you're under the influence of Satan when, chill out, it's just the Feast of Dionysus. Is your response to concerns that the Olympics opens with a depraved trans sex fetish romp for kids. This is a war on the West. A look at their warriors gives me confidence. Good luck. That's not the better angel of my nature being brought out. I'm just going to say that right now. That's not my favorite me on display. It wasn't the only not my favorite me on display, because I followed it up with this. To the Olympics Committee and everyone standing in allyship with this disgusting satanic child predator jubilee. If you think the Prince of Peace was a pushover or instructed we, his followers, to merely turn the other cheek, you need to read a little closer. And then I pulled good old Matthew 18:6, and I don't have a lot of Bible verses at the ready. Maybe the fact that I know this one and like it says not the greatest thing about me. But if one of these little ones believes in me and someone causes that child to sin, it would be better for that person to have a large stone tied around the neck and be drowned in the sea. And there's a couple variations on this one, but they're all equally forceful. This is my first reaction to stuff like this. I'm going to admit it. This is what it makes me feel like. How dare you put this imagery in front of our kids? How dare you promote things that are injuring children, and especially the mentally challenged, often autistic, and deeply struggling kids of the West who are under assault, especially our young girls, are under assault by this ideology. It gets my engine running. I see red. And so in the name of being a better Christian than I was being here, I want to say that I think these are the moments that now come at us too often as parents and adults, that we should do better than I did in response. We should put our voice out. We should not just allow the values that we hold dear to be trampled and spit on, especially in venues where that is wholly inappropriate, like the Olympic Games. This is not the venue for that. They got it wrong. They deserve to be boycotted, to be mocked, to be treated like pariah. because that is what that activity is. That's what that open is. I'm not going to mince words about that. But we shouldn't allow our reaction to violate our principles. We shouldn't become children ourselves when we're being poked and prodded into action. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. I run a little hot. It's an Italian-American thing, but I think it's a human thing. And so what I like to do with these videos is try to take a deep breath and reflect on what's the right thing for me as a dad and as a man and as an adult to do. And I think what we have to do is take a step back. Number one, protect our kids from this stuff. And number two, not allow them to goad us into becoming intolerant reactionaries. I think that that's in danger. I think that the radicalism of this movement that's expressed in this image and these images is doing the marginalized an incredible disservice. And I encourage you to watch my conversation with Andrew Doyle, because I lay it all on the line there for him and I to push and pull on, because I am not being made more tolerant by having my faith mocked and reasonable sexual norms subverted and perverted for children to see. I'm not being groomed into tolerance, let's say, by that. I am being pushed into intolerance. And I'm not alone. A lot of people feel that way. You are working for a different end in doing this. And so I think we need to take the high road as parents and not soak in the anger this evokes as we try to use our voice to push back. But there are times to be forceful. There are times to stand strong in the face of evil. And this might be one of those times. But I honestly am grappling with this. I'm curious what you all think. How do you think the better angels of our nature should come alongside when we are in a battle like this, when we are confronted by assaults to the things we hold dear, by institutions who have stated a purpose, and that purpose is being violated in the name of an assault on our culture, on our icons, on our faith, on our family, on our values. You know, what's the right way to make your voice heard? I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. I'm going to keep trying each and every week to do a better and better job of this. I hope this gave you some things to think about, or at least some questions worth asking of yourself the way I am of myself. I don't have the answer, but, you know, there you have it. I hope you have a great weekend.